Hello, everyone, and welcome to Thoughts and Coffee. My name is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey. I'm the founder and host of Let's Talk Supply Chain, the Blended Podcast, and the founder of the Blended Pledge. And this is going to be a great show. We've got Tariq from AWS Supply Chain on the show, and we're going to be talking all about AI. I know AI. We're talking about AI all the time, but it's really the things that you need to know. We're going to be talking about no more passwords. We're going to be talking about what you need to know for 2026, how friction can be your best friend, and so much more. So stay tuned. But first, I do need to get into what's happening at Let's Talk Supply Chain. So let's give a big shout out. So of course, we've got our show sponsor, Secret Society of Supply Chain.com. This is our free membership group, and we've got so many amazing new members that I've got to give a shout out to. Miranda Masuko, Michael DeRogan, Alex Pankhurst, Wendy Leland, John Noble, Nick Thomas. Welcome to the community. We can't wait to see you in there. We've got a lot of great things happening. So go and check it out, Secret Society of Supply Chain.com. All right, we've got some brand new episodes, and we've got some new Women in Supply Chain episodes. We've got Nermeen Sayad, episode 509, and she talks all about her career journey within supply chain. What did that look like? Advice for other women. And it's such a great story. I really, really highly recommend that you go and check it out. And for those who are watching right now, I want to know where you're tuning in from. Put that information in the comments. We'll give you a shout out. We'll put you up on the screen because we want to know where you're tuning in from. All right, we've got a second episode. It's a second Woman in Supply Chain episode. I filmed this one on site at the Woman in Supply Chain Forum with Kendra Tanner, and she's got such a great story. And she's now running a very large logistics company, and it's such a great story of, you know, where she started in the industry, where she is now, some leadership lessons, and a lot of really great advice. So for those two, episode 509, 510, go and check it out wherever you listen and watch the show. Of course, we've got both episodes over on our Let's Talk Supply Chain LinkedIn. All right, let's see where we're coming up. So live tomorrow at 2 p.m. Now, if you missed the first episode last month, we had so much amazing feedback about this brand new show with Breacham Group. It's called The Performance Paradox. Now, the one coming up tomorrow, it's a roadmap for supply chain operations to suck less. I mean, who doesn't want that? So make sure that you click the attend button, even if you can't attend live, and we will send you that link, but we don't want you to miss out on that. We've also got playlists over on our Let's Talk Supply Chain YouTube for this show and for Eric Johnson's show, TPM Today. So you can go and check out all the episodes over there. Now, Thursday, January 8th, that's right. We're all going to go away for holidays. We're going to come back, and we are going to have this great show for you with Anaplan, from insight to foresight, AI trends that will define supply chain in 2026. What does that look like for you? How can you define your supply chains? How can you bring in AI in a great way? And we're going to be talking about that with EJ from Anaplan. So click the attend button, even if you can't attend live, and we will send you the link. Last but not least, where are we going to be in person? Well, February 9th through 11th, we are going to be at Manifest in Vegas. If you don't have your ticket, go and get your ticket now. There's a lot going on there. I'm going to be on stage, I think, 4 times, which is amazing. We're also going to be recording podcasts on site with our clients, which I'm super excited about. And we're also partnering with Supply Chain Brain, and that's on the Masters of Innovation Award. And we highly recommend you check that out. It's going to be 12:30 on Tuesday of Manifest. And we can't announce the winners just yet, but we will be announcing the winners very soon. And they are some large names in retail, and they're going to be sharing their innovation stories, what that looks like, what they went through, the challenges, the solution, the ROI and benefit, and you're not going to want to miss that. So make sure you put that on your agenda for Manifest. All right. I think we're at the end here, and it's about time to bring up our guest, Tariq. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing very well. It's a bit early, but I'm an early bird, so this is good. So
This
great to be
keeps
on.
happening. I keep
Yeah.
having these guests from the West Coast, and I'm like, please, please, please get up a little bit early because we start at 7 a.m. Pacific time, which is 10 a.m. Eastern. But still, you've got to get ready for it. You know, you've got to get into the office. So I really appreciate you showing up
Of course.
early for us today because this is going to be a great episode. So before we get started, though, I want everybody to get to know you. So who are you? What do you do? Talk to me a little bit about AWS.
Sure. Tarek Chowdhury. So I am with AWS. I'm with our Applied AI Solutions team. My background has always been in supply chains. I've worked in supply chain for about, I might look like I'm 24, but I've worked in supply chain for over 30 years in various guises. I've run supply chains, I've built supply chain solutions, I've deployed supply chains, I've done consulting, done everything here. And we did some really interesting things at AWS in this realm, trying to help our customers solve some of their biggest challenges at a scale and leveraging some of some of the capabilities that we have that we've used ourselves to drive our business at scale. So
Awesome.
been an interesting journey so far.
Can I use that too? I'm 24, but I've been in the industry for almost 30 years.
You carry it way better than I do. Let's put it that way.
Because I think we've been in the industry for approximately the same time.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's so interesting, right? Because we've seen such an evolution. I mean, I joined the industry in the late 90s. And it's been such a transformation within the industry. I can only imagine what you've seen.
It has and it hasn't. I think the technology evolution has been immense over that entire period. Yet amazingly, we still have the same problems, right? If you're running a supply chain or a supply chain, right, you're still short of parts. You're still sort of impacted by delays. You're still impacted by events that are occurring. And, Excel still is king, right, in a lot of ways. And so that's why I think the latest incarnation or the latest sort of movement and the technology that's come out is really interesting. This, I think, is going to be a bit of a game changer for us moving forward.
Yeah, I hear you. We definitely do have some of the same problems. Although I think since I started, e-commerce crept its way in and created all sorts of chaos in supply chain. Yeah. All right, we're going to get to our poll, but I do want to give a shout out to Mike from Copenhagen and Ergen tuning in from Turkey as well. Thank you all so much for joining us. All right, let's get to our poll, and it would help if I scrolled better. Okay, so the question is, agentic AI in supply chain is A, drum roll please. We had about 53 votes on this one. You still have some time to vote on this. We'd love to hear from you. 75% of you said a game-changing tool. 15% of you said useful, not revolutionary. And 9% said a passing fad. Tariq, what do you think of these particular results? I mean, 75% out the gate, I kind of agree with that. I'm a little concerned about the other two.
I don't think there should be too much concern. I think it's just where it's the level of understanding that's out there in the industry. I think with the LLMs that have been, that everyone uses on a personal level, that's kind of skewed some of the metrics. People don't necessarily know what to do and how to apply the capability within their businesses and what it means. And let's be honest, when we're talking about supply chain or supply chains in general, how many people don't use Excel, don't still use, some mechanism to download data and manipulate it and do something else? You're still relying a lot on heroics and, in Excel, which tab not to touch and which field to go in. And so there's a little bit of lack of awareness about how to apply this capability outside of generate a meme or do whatever else, and I think that's changing. So I think if you ran this poll in a year from now, you're probably going to see a wildly different answer. I think 75% is still pretty high compared to the last year of, what is an evolution and a revolution in this space that's taken hold.
Yeah, a note to our team. We're going to ask this in a year's time, but I want to know from all of you watching, which one would you pick? And I think it's interesting that you said it's really just around the understanding. So almost some of these answers and some of the reasons why we've picked those other two are a little bit not out of maybe fear, but out of being uncomfortable. And we're going to be talking about that very soon, because that could actually be your superpower. And I think it might be an underestimated success metric of digital transformations. And I'm excited to talk about that. But before we do, I just want to let everybody know we did have a QR code. We do have a QR code up in the top right-hand corner. If you want to know more about AWS supply chain, click that QR code. We've also had a couple of episodes. So if you go to letstalksupplychain.com, search AWS, those episodes will come up and you can learn a little bit more about it there. Talk to me about a market update. This is kind of the point of the show where we get to learn a little bit more from you and your perspective as to what is the industry talking about. You just had reInvent last week. I think you had some exciting announcements, maybe not on the supply chain side, but on different avenues within what you're doing over at AWS. But what is the industry talking about?
No, that's a great segue. I mean, reInvent is always a terrific event. I always come back from it very jaded because of the sheer number of people that are there. A lot of great customer conversations. I think just picking up on the poll as well. A lot of people are wanting to understand how to apply specifically agentic AI and how it will improve their operations.
Yeah,
they are looking at it from a standpoint of, how do I automate things? And I think that's just scratching the surface a little bit. So I think there's a lot more education to come. With some of the discussions that we've had, it's really an opportunity to reimagine the way that you do business in a very different way, right? Specifically around supply chain. So the impacts for to drive transformation right now with the technology that's going to be there is huge. So a lot of excitement, a lot of weariness. There's been this sort of tech bubble before in terms of what can be done, but I think it's sort of grounded in a bit of reality. I think one of the best quotes that I heard from a customer or that I was talking to during the conference was, they're extremely excited about it. They know that the LLMs are getting better and better, and sort of there's less sort of hallucinations. Now they just want the actuality not to be a marketing deck, right? It's like they don't want the marketing materials, they want the actuals to be better than the prospects there. So I thought that was a sort of a good way to sort of frame things up.
Yeah, and I think you're right. We're also going to be talking about that, I think, within the context of the first article as well, because that's really the difference between whether it's a successful implementation or not, in the fact that, is it just marketing or is it actually working and working within our workflows? Now, I want to give a shout out. If you like the conversation, make sure you put a fire emoji in the comments. And also, if you have any questions, make sure to put those in the comments as well, because we definitely want to get to those. Now, you mentioned hallucinations, and I just recently finished the morning show on Apple TV. I don't know if anybody's watching it, but there was a major challenge with their AI avatars that they were releasing as the morning show. And it actually destroyed a couple of careers. So I think as we talk about AI, we need to also talk about training. We need to talk about ethical AI, which I actually did an episode of Blended on as well, which you can find over at blendedpledge.org. Just in case you're wondering, right? Because I think there's good ways of using it. And I think there are ways that we could possibly be using it that could turn against us as well, which we need to be aware of. All right, let's get to our first article. And so this article talks about how MIT found that 95% of GenAI pilots fail because companies avoid friction. This is what you were just talking about, Tariq, right?
Yeah.
In the fact that people feel, or teams or professionals feel like we need to be comfortable with it, before we can start with it. And this article is saying the complete opposite. If you are uncomfortable, you're creating some friction, you're actually driving the evolution and building the muscle of Gen AI. So talk to me about this. What did you think about this article?
Yeah, I love this article. So I read it when it first came out, and it did sort of resonate. It sort of supported a lot of the things that we're seeing or have seen as well, at least over the last sort of 18 months or so. Most AI pilots don't necessarily fail because there's a weakness in the technology. It's typically because organizations, just as you sort of highlighted, are very strong. And what I mean by that is they're strong at protecting the ways that they work, right?
Mm.
So it's that institutional sort of baggage that just drives that level of inertia that's there. They'll say, oh, we'll dabble in AI or we'll try it, but it's not going to change the way that we make decision rights or incentives or whatever else. That's exactly what you want it to do. That's not innovation. That's sort of automation cosplay, right? In terms of what it drives. It only works, and the application of AI will only work if you're willing to redesign how decisions actually get made, right? Pilots are failing because organizations aren't necessarily ready to change the way their decision rights are operational. Friction isn't the enemy at all. I mean, you and I both worked in supply chain for a long time. We don't hate friction. Constraints are literally the job, right? It's like we hate lateness, latency, lateness on decisions, lateness on escalations. The meeting you have to discuss why everything was late, right? It's like everything that occurs on that front. And when you're looking at sort of AI, specifically agentic AI, it won't remove the friction. It will just move it upstream.
Yeah.
And it should force you to make those trade-offs a lot earlier when you still have options, or when your standard operating procedures that you never follow, but you should be following, should kick in. It's not necessarily this discomfort, right? So it moves it from that piece to being uncomfortable, or there's a level of discomfort. That's not failure at all. That's, I think, progress kind of clearing its throat and saying, okay, here's what we do next.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think that's kind of what I really took from it. And I do want to sort of touch on one other thing, which is just, and this sort of goes hand in hand, and I think this is maybe a little bit of why some of the areas where agentic AI in particular is being applied, because it's a safe space. And that's because, let me take a specific example around planners, right? AI really replaces heroics and not humans, right? That's the way you should sort of think about that. You shouldn't replace your best planners. They should be promoted. They would spend less time firefighting, manipulating Excel, knowing which tab not to touch, and knowing what to do in cell B47 or whatever else. That's not, this goes to the Excel tournament a little bit as well, right? They should be finding time to design the system that prevents all of that, right? And heroics doesn't scale, right? They just burn people out, and at some point make great retirement stories. So it's I think the opportunity is there to really challenge ourselves and look at things in a very different way.
Yeah. And this is something that transcends across industry. Tom made a comment over on LinkedIn about real estate investment opportunities and how he's using AI, but it hallucinates inactive listings and things like that. And so this isn't just about supply chain, but a couple of things that really stood out for me on this particular article before we move on. One thing that they talked about was shadow AI. Do you know what shadow AI is? Well, I would highly recommend you go and check out this article if you don't. What they're talking about is how teams and professionals are using personal AI tools to get ahead. So I think what that means for leaders and for C-suites and organizations, if you're not implementing these kind of tools and technology that your teams are getting used to using and want to use, they're going to go out and they're going to use it anyways. And they are going to surpass you in that if you are not bringing that to the teams and you're not implementing it within your organizations, which I think is an incredible thing to think about as a leader. You're taking your time to figure out the tools. That's great. but your team might be surpassing you already in what you're thinking about implementing. And so really talk to your teams, really find out what they're doing. And then one other comment about bias, right? They talk about how, the human element of AI, and we've talked about bias on this show before, and how the humans do bring the bias when it provides that outcome, sometimes depending out of fear, right? Out of, the outcome being better than what they could have produced. And what does C-suite think about that? And so that element is highlighted within this article. And I think it's an interesting point to go and check out. All right, let's get to our second article. So this article is about cybersecurity trends in 2026. And you might be wondering, why are we talking about this again? Well, we're talking about it because it is again at the high top of the highest list for supply chain threats and risks coming into 2026. It's been at the top for, I think, the last 2 or 3 years. This is important. What they're talking about is how it's going to define supply chain trajectory in 2026. Cyber resiliency equals business competency. And it's almost like, I was reading this and I was thinking to myself, Tariq, I was like, it's almost like we need an FBI department within our organizations to be able to deal with this. What did you think about this article? I've got a couple other things to mention, but I'd like to hear your thoughts first.
Yeah, I looked at it slightly differently. I in the sense that it's always been there and it's always been viewed as the IT problem, right? In terms of what needs to be addressed or how it gets looked at. Now, if I look at the domain that we're in, right, in the discipline that we're in, it's a supplier problem, it's a logistics problem, it's a planning problem. Your weakest supplier is now everyone's weakest supplier. Congrats, you're all sort of sharing the same password or using the same password.
Right.
Because AI is democratized defense and attack, right? Which means trust can't be assumed anymore. So I thought it was very pertinent, timely, right, in terms of when, to consider it right now, and especially if you want to operate at any kind of scale as well, right? Because you have to have those controls and those guardrails and those operational boundaries, secure and in place, because it's going to be even more relevant right now. Both the goodies and the baddies will have access to the same technology or the same capability. So you've got to really, ensure that you engineer your solutions, your systems. It's got to be monitored, and occasionally you're going to revoke things at 2 a.m. when you find something, and that's going to ensure that you're not taking trust for granted anymore, and it's not necessarily assured. It's not the handshake that was typically there in the past, right? In terms of my handshake is my word, or my trust is my word, and
right. Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And a couple things that stood out for me is that the primary targets are going to be third and fourth party SaaS products. So if you haven't had these discussions with some of the vendors that you're currently working with, or who they are partnered with, then you need to have these conversations and make sure that they have protocol in place. What they're saying is that quickly detecting threats is really going to be your success metric for 2026, because it's not a matter of whether it's going to happen, it's a matter of when. And so having these discussions now, making sure there's protocol in place, making sure that they can quickly detect these so that it doesn't further affect you for days or weeks, which would obviously create a lot of chaos within your supply chains.
Absolutely agree. I think one of the other things I sort of took a deeper sort of look at that, and it's like exactly like you said, like where would it be impactful? I think it does expose and will expose a level of sort of organizational debt that exists in supply chains as well, in terms of how things have always been done and what's in place. If going back to the example that we had out of the MIT report as well, and then sort of applying this veneer on top, if every exception that you're dealing with is going to require a Slack thread or a spreadsheet, or trying to find the person who's on vacation and they're using email to we each added them.
Right.
Those are all exposure points at this point.
Hmm.
So you've got to sort of look at the whole system and look at ways of tightening it up. It's not, just the algorithm that's a problem anymore. It's
Yeah.
the whole system and the design of the security around it.
Yeah, and they're saying that to close the gap between security and strategy, right now they're too far apart and they want you to
Yeah.
close the gap as an organization. The other thing I thought was interesting, go read the article, but they talk about no more passwords. And I think that's really interesting. So how do we get into the biometrics? I mean, that's going to take it to a whole nother level. And I don't have an answer to that today, but go and check out that article because they do talk about how we're going to be going into the no password era, which I don't know how that's going to work, but we're going to see. Anyways, we've got a couple of minutes left and I want to get to our last article. Now, Tariq mentioned this earlier in the conversation around the world of competitive Excel. Now, if you're really good at Excel and you're in supply chain, I mean, who can't be good at Excel if they're in supply chain? You might want to check this out because there is this competition. I've talked about it on Thoughts and Coffee before, but it was a while ago. And I thought this was interesting because the world of competitive Excel, the company that puts on this particular tournament every year, has banned AI. They introduced AI this year and now they've banned it for 2026 and beyond. And I think that's really interesting. What did you think about this? But before you say anything, Rudy, I want to give you a shout out over on my personal LinkedIn. Thanks so much for joining us. Tariq, what did you think about this article?
I thought it was hilarious. First of all, I didn't actually know that there was, an Olympics for Excel essentially. And
Mhm.
so when I saw that, I was, it kind of made me chuckle. And you know, it, supply chains do still run on Excel, right?
Mhm.
And the examples that I've used is is relevant. If you're I, if I don't think when AI starts winning Excel competitions, that's not a gimmick, right?
Yeah.
Because to me, it exposes that if that's I mentioned you don't want to reward heroics too much because then heroics becomes the process, right? In terms
Yeah.
of how do you sort of manage that? This is sort of the canary in the coal mine or the canary in the cubicle for me
Right.
because it's telling me that this has always been the part of the job, whether it's
Mhm.
planner or materials manager or anyone in operations. This is the part of the job that we've all been rewarding up until this point.
Yeah.
So we've been providing manual optimization under pressure. And now with agentic AI, this is all, automatable or you can make it somewhat autonomous and take some of the easier decision making out of it. It doesn't mean that humans are not valuable or that role or that function or that individual, I should say, is not valuable. What it means is the value of that individual has to move up the stack or at least out of
Mhm.
cell B27 on tab 6, right, or whatever that is. So that's kind of what I took out of it. But it was interesting because I think wasn't there back when they introduced in the chess tournaments they had Gary Kasparov and whoever play sort of the IBM machine, and at some point the IBM machine would continually like win, right, in terms
Yeah.
of what it would do. I think this is sort of our inflection point when it comes to what everyone lives in and breathes in
Mhm.
with supply chains in Excel.
Yeah.
That was a
It's so
brilliant
true.
article. I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, yeah. There was actually a photo that I scrolled through of the top 10 or the top 7 jobs that people have that are within the Excel competition. Supply chain isn't up there, so there's definitely an opportunity for anybody watching and listening. That if you're good at Excel, you might want to check it out for
Yeah.
2026. But when the MEWC came out and said that AI was banned in their tournament moving forward, they recently put this quote up on their LinkedIn and it says, just because humans invented the car doesn't make it less fun to run a marathon. Now, I don't understand marathons, but that quote really puts it into context, right? Even though we have the opportunity to utilize AI, there's some parts of being a human and some of the things that we do on a daily basis that we don't want to take the fun out of. So I want to leave you with that. This has been such a great episode, Tariq. Thank you so much for joining me. And thank you so much for everybody in the audience who joined us as well. We really had a global audience today, which was really, really fun to see. And so grab that QR code before we go. Head over and find out a little bit more about AWS supply chains, or check out some of the episodes we have over at letstalksupplychain.com. Tariq, thank you again for joining me today.
Of course. Thank you so much. It's been great. Loved it.
And this is the last episode of 2025. I forgot. We're taking a hiatus for the next 2 weeks. So I want to say happy holidays to everyone. Our heart goes out to everybody who was affected through the events that happened this past weekend. But we do want to wish everybody a happy holidays, and thank you so much for all your support.